Chapter 8. The Eighth Salvation Story. The Greatest Salvation and the Greatest Renunciation. Chief Tax Collector Zacchaeus' Salvation Story. Then Jesus entered and passed through Jericho. Now behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus, who was a chief tax collector and a rich man. And he sought to see who Jesus was, but could not because of the crowd, for he was of short stature. So he ran ahead and climbed up into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was going to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and saw him, and said, "Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today I must stay at your house." So he made haste, and came down and received him joyfully. But when they saw it, they all complained, saying, "He has gone to be a guest with a man who is a sinner." Then Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, I give half of my goods to the poor, and if I have taken anything from anyone by false accusation, I restore fourfold." And Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because he also is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which was lost." Luke 19, 1-10. This story takes place in Jericho, the land cursed by God. Now behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus, a chief tax collector and a rich man. Zacchaeus means simple. He is the chief sinner among sinners. At that time, the Israelites recognized tax collectors as sinners, and Zacchaeus was a chief tax collector, even worse than all the tax collectors. Tax collectors were officials established by the Roman government at that time to administer taxes to their people, and they were people who welcomed the Roman regime and bullied and oppressed their people. Zacchaeus was a rich man who got all his money from blackmailing his people, and he was the most hated man in Israel. And he sought to see who Jesus was, but could not because of the crowd, for he was of short stature. His short stature was a natural difficulty, making it difficult for him to see Jesus. In Jericho, the first person to be saved was a blind beggar, and the next to be saved was a vile rich man, showing that salvation has no bounds. Though a sinner hated by all, he had a simple heart and a longing for the Lord, and such blessed ones are found everywhere in the church. He used everything he had just to see Jesus. So he ran ahead and climbed into a sycamore tree to see him, for he was going to pass that way. It wasn't easy for an honorable official and a rich man to do everything he could, even climbing up a sycamore tree, as he was desperate to see Jesus. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and saw him, and said to him, "Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today I must stay at your house." This is an amazing salvation that even Zacchaeus would have been too happy to believe. He heard Jesus call him by name, and the Lord knew only Zacchaeus among so many in the midst of the crowd. The Lord knew every man's heart, and the Lord knew who the Blessed One was. The Lord told him to come down so that he didn't have to climb so high to see Jesus. Jesus said to Zacchaeus, "Today I must stay at your house." This is not something that Zacchaeus on the sycamore tree could have imagined. By this time, Jesus had projected his glorious life into Zacchaeus' heart. He made haste, came down, and received him joyfully. This is Zacchaeus' response after salvation entered his heart. Great is the salvation, and great is the joy. But when the crowd saw it, they all complained, saying, "He has gone to be a guest with a man who is a sinner." How far is the natural life's response from the life of the Savior? Their response makes it not easy for them to receive salvation. Then we see an amazing change in Zacchaeus when the amazing salvation came upon him. Then Zacchaeus stood and said to the Lord, "Look, Lord, I give half of my goods to the poor." All of a sudden, half of his estate went. Then he said, "And if I have taken anything from anyone by false accusation, I restore fourfold." Zacchaeus not only made amends, but also reparation. Not only reparation, but by fourfold. All his possessions were transformed from being a rich man to being a poor man simply by receiving Jesus. And what a great salvation it is to be so joyful. The Lord's love is so sweet. The Lord said, "Today salvation has come to this house." The Lord himself is the glorious salvation. The price Zacchaeus was willing to pay to receive salvation was realized. The change in Zacchaeus after his salvation caused the chief tax collector, who loved money the most, to give up everything he had and be filled with joy in his heart and in the heart of his Savior, a life that terrified his enemies. Finally, the Lord said, "For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save that which was lost." But Zacchaeus was a tax collector of the deepest depravity, hated by the whole nation, and could there be any hope for such a man in the eyes of men? Yet he was saved by a great salvation.